In this episode of r/Entitled Parents, I have two stories for you about some of the worst, most entitled renters you've ever seen. Karen demands I drive 24/7 to bring water to their rental house. I own a hot tub repair and maintenance company, and one of the services we offer is hot tub water refills, where we truck in the water to fill the tub if the well at the house can't produce enough or if there is a requirement. One of the wells at a home I service went dry. This happens, and it is a backup 500-gallon cistern. So the property manager asked if I could fill their tank. I said, yep, no problem. By the way, the well does still produce water, it's just not as much as needed. So usually if you can augment the tank, then the well will recover and you're good. At the time, my truck was in the shop, so I borrowed my parents' SUV, hooked up my water trailer, filled up the tank, then transported it to their house. I would have normally declined, but the property manager was desperate and I'm the only company in town with water transport equipment. The house is then all good to go, and the Karen of this story, who is renting that property, is set to arrive that evening. Just a day and a half later, the house has run out. The property manager called me and asked if there was anything I could do, if I could just take a look. It's Sunday, the bulk water fill location is closed, and I had no truck or ability to tow. For what it's worth, the property manager offered a new house for them to stay at, but the entitled parents didn't want a different house. So I took a small load of water over with my 1958 Jeep. I filled my small tank and trailer at my house and brought over 275 gallons. This was a total pain in the butt. Once I arrived, the entitled grandmothers come out and immediately start asking why I didn't bring 500 gallons and when I'm gonna go and get them some more, because apparently they had 18 people staying there and they all needed showers. It's a pretty big mountain house. She told me that they expect me to drive round the clock delivering water for their entire stay. By the way, when I can't fill at the bulk station and I can't use my full-size trailer, this is all a total pain in the butt. It takes 40 minutes to fill the tank at my house, 20 minutes to drive, and then 40 minutes to transfer. 18 people consume a ton of water. For reference, if I had my truck and full-size trailer, the whole process would only take 30 minutes. This was all because they wanted to stay in this house to have their ideal vacation, and any other house or houses would simply not do. You know what? I feel like that's kind of fair enough. I don't normally agree with entitled people, but if you've paid to vacation in a certain house, you do deserve to be in that house. I think that's okay. So, one entitled grandma, the Karen of the story, then said it was my job to supply them with everything they needed for their vacation, otherwise she would make sure I got fired. Okay, now that I'm less okay with. I'd been pretty friendly to this point. Karen said I should ensure my schedule was clear for the next week to support them, and that I should go and rent a truck to be able to haul water to them. I honestly couldn't believe it. I was being a professional and friendly person who was just trying to help out, but after those remarks, I couldn't take it. So I clarified with the two mother hens about what I was and wasn't going to do. Also, their adult kids were looking pretty ashamed at this point. One, I said that was not happening, as I do not work for the management company. I'm a third-party contractor who works on hot tubs. I was doing the property manager a favor by helping them out. The two entitled grandmothers then threatened to tell the property management company to cancel my contract if I don't help them, and implied that as someone delivering water for a business, I'd need the money. And two, I told them to go ahead. My full-time job is in cloud technology, and this is a side business for me. I literally couldn't care less, and I was still not going to drive round the clock to do that when they could just move to another property. There was some more back and forth, but I finally told them that they'd be stupid to try and stay here, that their experience they wanted to have in this house just wasn't going to happen. I went home, had a couple of beers, and enjoyed the rest of my Sunday. Apparently the next morning they did move to another house. Also, the property manager gave them a full refund, so their trip was free. Okay, and there we go for story number one. Now again, as I said, off the rip and during that story, it is tough. You pay a lot of money for your perfect vacation spot and you want it to be perfect. And when it isn't and something's gone wrong like this, I get it. You're going to be annoyed. And genuinely, I would also be annoyed, right? I wouldn't go to the extent that these guys have gone to, obviously. And you can see their kids cringing at how entitled their parents are being. But I can't have any qualms with the fact that they're annoyed. They don't have water supplied to the house they paid a lot of money for, I presume, and they have 18 people in and it's probably like a nice family holiday. Yeah, it's going to be annoying. However, if the property manager is being so nice and offering you another house for free, then I'm sorry, but you have to take that. You really do. I mean, that's a good deal. It really is. Like, the property manager probably does have to do that. They do have to offer you some sort of compensation, I presume, but this seems like a pretty good deal. Ultimately, yes, it's not the holiday, not the vacation you would have wanted, but you are then getting a free property for the amount of time you were going to have to pay probably a lot of money for. I don't know. I think it's a pretty good deal. And again, you can still be annoyed, but these things do happen. It's not as if it was malicious or if somebody just turned the water off or there was something wrong with the property beforehand and they still accepted your reservation. No, stuff happens and you're getting a free vacation. You've got to take that. Don't ask somebody to work on Sundays and you know, bring water to you 24/7 just because there's an issue with the property itself. That's ridiculous. Now moving on to our second entitled people story of this episode. Now this one is actually from the same user as the first. 12 entitled people in an Airbnb designed for 6 cost me $600. I thought you might enjoy my second thirsty female dog story. I posted previously here about a client of mine with a similar story, but this is the origin story that happened years before that other post, the one we just looked at. My wife and I own a mountain cabin, and a few years ago we decided to put it up on Airbnb. The place is a remote A-frame on 3 acres of forested land with awesome views, about 30 minutes from a ski resort. This was our first Airbnb, so we were pretty cautious with everything, i.e. looking at guests' past reviews, asking them about their trip to make sure this place would suit them, etc. Everything was going pretty well, until the entitled people of this story booked the whole weekend for Thanksgiving. They told us they were driving out from Texas. Mum, Dad, 3 little kids, and 2 dogs. Being that this was our first holiday rental, we went all out for them. We set a turkey to defrost in the fridge for them and left out a snack platter and a couple of bottles of champagne. Talk about hospitality. That is unreal. They arrive Sunday nights, and the next few days, all hell breaks loose. I get a 6 a.m. call on Monday morning. The whole family is puking and sick as hell. They all had altitude sickness. The cabin is at 11,000 feet above sea level, so this happens, especially when you aren't in shape and just came from sea level. I did warn the guests about this ahead of time. So I'm on the phone talking them through everything, where the urgent care is, what to do, etc. And by day 2, things have calmed down. That's Tuesday. However, then I take a look at our water cistern gauge, remote monitored. This house has what we call a slow well recovery system. Basically, at some times of the year, the well might only produce around 60 gallons per day instead of the usual 300 plus. So we have a 500 gallon water storage system that helps smooth out the demand curves. Basically, once the tank goes below 40%, the well starts pumping, and if the well goes dry, a timer gets started, and it will pump again in 3 hours until the tank is topped up. Full description in listing and guidebook. This system is more than adequate for 6 guests. Also, the house only has 1 bathroom and a 40-gallon hot water tank, so it's not like anyone can take long showers. Again, that's all in the listing. It's a rustic place. Tactically speaking, we just ask guests to conserve water, but the system is fully automatic and no one even knows it's there. Well, after 48 hours, I checked our tank monitor and see it's around 35% full, which means the guests used all of the storage and what the well can produce in 2 days. I'm estimating nearly 700 gallons of water. I literally thought something must be broken because there was no way in heck that 2 parents and 3 little kids used that much. Like perhaps the well fuse popped and they got nothing from the well. So I'm now freaking out, thinking this nice family is going to be out of water on Thanksgiving. I called her and politely asked that they conserve water and had them reset the system, aka turn the breaker on and off. So I basically said I'd monitor it for 3 hours, and if I didn't see the levels make progress, I'd get a water truck in. This would literally be a first, as I've never needed to do it. Her response was, "Sounds good, but hurry because we drink a lot of water." How weird of a comment is that? As if 5 people drinking a gallon a day maximum somehow equates to the hundreds of gallons missing from the system. That honestly, guys, is one of the strangest things that I've ever heard. Sounds good, but hurry because we drink a lot of water. What? Well, there is really no change in water level after 3 hours, so I get on the phone to book a water truck. And as it's now 1 day before Thanksgiving, it's just not happening. So I now need to figure out how to transport water to this house. I live 1.5 hours away. I went to Farm & Tractor Supply and bought a 275-gallon tank that would fit in my truck, plus hoses and pumps, then drive up there, figure out where I can buy bulk water from, and go to the house. I finally get there at around 4 p.m. and the guests are out, but gave me permission to go inside and test things out. AKA, I wanted to make sure the system was working. It was. So they really had used that much. I went inside and found 2 huskies in a crate who had pooped themselves, and it was all over the place. It smelled gross. The owners said they'd be back and would clean it up. At this point, I've been working on this for 8 hours. I'm sick, it's 10 degrees Fahrenheit outside, and I'm now hooking up the transfer pump. Tomorrow is Thanksgiving and I still need to get to my parents' house. Thankfully, it's only 30 minutes from the cabin. I start pumping, then I see their car pull up, and they are waiting at the bottom of the driveway. Knowing they have small kids, I go down and say hi and let them know they can go on in and I'll be done in about 40 minutes. They started to act really odd at this point, but go ahead in. Then I saw 2 more cars on the side of the road around the switchback. Big steep S-bend in front of the house, and it clicks. The reason I just did all of this work and spent nearly $600 on supplies is because these people had 12 people staying there. If you're all curious as to how I didn't notice when I went inside, I didn't snoop around, I just went straight to the breaker box and then went to the crawl space where the tanks are. Also, the smell from the dogs was just horrid, so I got out as fast as possible. At this point, I went up to the front door, knocked, and said, "Be honest with me, how many people do you have staying here?" 9? I could see she was lying, but even that number was over our legal capacity base on our permit. You realise that this listing is for 6 people? Well, there are beds for more people, and the kids have a crib, and we didn't know our family wanted to come when we booked it. The loft does have a pull-out couch, so best case there is sleeping for 8 adults, but I'm guessing people were sleeping on the couches as well. I just spent $600 plus a full day to solve a problem that was actually not a problem, I said. Well, the house should have water. No, the house system was designed and tested for 6 people. The stated number on the listing. I don't know how you think it's okay to have this many people here. Look, we could leave, but it would have to be tomorrow, and we expect a refund because we don't want to drive down these roads in the dark with our kids. It's maybe 6 p.m. at this point. There's no cell service at the cabin, so I went into town and got on the Wi-Fi at a local bar and called Airbnb. At this point, I'd been hosting for 3 months and I had no idea how to handle this situation. But now I was more afraid that they'd damaged something in the house. So Airbnb cancelled their reservation and asked them to leave. I was able to recover around $200 for a deep cleaning on the house, and they didn't get a refund. On a funny note, at the beginning of this year, I started a hot tub service company, and water trucking is a service we offer, and I used some of that equipment to get started. Oh wow, that is interesting, and it kind of makes sense now. And there we go, that is the end of the second story. On that one, I've got to say, it's one of those. It's kind of glamorized, I think, in my head. And I don't know if you guys have seen the adverts in whatever country that you live in, but here in the UK, the adverts for Airbnb are now targeted at people that are homeowners. And when they go away on holiday, for example, the advert is targeted at them saying, if you're away, why don't you also rent out your house for a little period of time, just like a week or so, or even a weekend on Airbnb. So you're making money from your property when you're spending money on another property when you're on vacation or whatever. However, although it is kind of glamorized, seeing stuff like this, I just don't know how I could ever risk that. Sure, you can make good money from doing it, but ultimately, if there's a risk of people like this being in your home, then no amount of money would ever warrant that stress and potential disaster that we've just seen has happened in this one. So yeah, it sounds great and all. I just don't think I could ever do it. Guys, if you've ever put your property on Airbnb and rented it out, get in the comments down below. Have you ever had any terrible renters like these people, or has it been pretty seamless and easy and you've made decent money from it? I'm genuinely quite interested because it's something that I would have considered in the past, but hearing horror stories like this, I'm just not sure now if I ever could. Anyway, that is going to do it for this one, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. As always, on whatever platform you're on, get in the comments. If you're on Spotify, go down below, there's a Q&A section, and of course if you're on YouTube, then you know where the comments are. Subscribe and follow me on whatever platform you're on, and I'll see you guys all tomorrow for some more Reddit stories.